that the problem is essentially imagined. Is it reality? Is it a person's personal reality? Absolutely. A person's personal reality is imagined. Is it real? It is as real as it is real. The thing about it is that it can be changed. And we can reimagine a world that is closer to our disposition and provides for our actualization. Now, many of us are not that familiar with the term actualization, though it's been popularized by Abraham Maslow, for example. He used to discuss Abraham Maslow, rather famous psychologist associated with transpersonal psychology, for example, took an interest in healthy people rather than just seeing the pathology. He certainly saw pathology and recognized that that had to be interrupted, but he also took a look at those folks that were self-actualizing, that they were fulfilling themselves, and he became interested in that and created a very reasonable theory about coming to a point where you are allowing yourself to actualize. And he suggested that there was a hierarchy of needs that had to first be met. The essential needs of survival, a sense of safety, a sense of belonging, and ultimately the sense that of self-worth. And when those are relaxed, when those are fulfilled, the person, according to Maslow's theory, is able to enter something that really is not an imperative. It is a preference to actualize yourself, to fulfill yourself, to give expression to your creativity, to your love. And no doubt about it, when we actualize ourselves, we are expressing the wealth that is inherent in human beings, the wealth that's inherent in nature itself. We are conduits of fullness that is nature. Now, the human being is heir to an extraordinary legacy of wealth. Take a look yourself, and you can realize that not only do we have toilets and sewers, we also are in space, etc. So we have an extraordinary potential. That potential is realized, by the way, the capacity for higher functioning exists with probably all of us, and we need to recognize that. And what is happening is that cultural norms are producing limitations, and our worldview limits us, our self-concept limits us. Not that this is necessarily a bad thing, but those value systems. Now, value systems cannot just be dismissed and recreated. You cannot should a value system. If you like chocolate and you want to value strawberry, you cannot simply say, I don't like chocolate and I like strawberry. You cannot should it. Oh, strawberries are much better for you than chocolate. Not necessarily so, however, but the point is that our value systems provide for stability. They do resist changing, though it may be in our benefit to change. They change with experience, a revelation, real circumstances have to occur for the mind to change. The mind must be persuaded to change. It is not a matter of desire. I wish I valued money. You may not value money. And there is a way for us all, a way through the path of our authentic selves. And we're still in a conversation about codependency, but you can see that the discussion about the sugar baby, that needy person, and the sugar daddy, the controlling person who provides, contracts with the needy person to have his or her needs met. And that model is really occurring in a particular setting that allows that to occur. It's very, very insidious and highly pervasive. I am indeed suggesting that most of us are enduring codependency currently. It is not good for us. I'm going to give you an example of that, and so you understand what I'm saying. I'm certainly not meaning to criticize in a negative fashion. However, we must see that certain aspects of our environment here in America, for example, we have just recently endured a recession that for example, that occurred in 2008, and this is now 2013 at the time of this video. But what appears to be occurring is that, for example, some of the multinational organizations have developed a formula, and wherein they, if you will, they buy off people of power, and they undermine a balancing mechanism to have their way. So there's a domination aspect to our current circumstances in our wonderful government, but you know, these are troubles that come with being alive. And however, this broad economic problem is affecting all of us. And for example, the desperate grasping at prosperity, for example, where it requires controls and subordination of others, monopolizing, that type of thing, becomes a setting in which we live in, and quite frankly, we become infected by degree with that same mindset. It's very much, for example, take the Roman Empire, the ideas and values that the emperor had actually becomes mirrored all the way through the entire cultural milieu. So that's just a brief discussion about values that are somewhat codependent and controlling. If you are being controlled, there's a tendency for you to prefer to be the controller, not recognizing that you are in the terms of being a controller or controlled. It's as if there are no other options. What would you rather be, controlled or a controller? Well, if that's all the options in the world, I'm going to, but they are not. We can be neither, and this is points to both liberation and mental health. So, and we are having a conversation about codependency and dependency because we are interested in breaking its spell and its pattern, and we are capable of doing that. However, what will carry us out of this particular situation is creativity. Creativity is required. Innovation is required. We must liberate ourselves from the spell of our times by degree. We certainly participate in our times. We understand that there are many blessings occurring. For example, I live in the eastern coast of New York State, New York City. I live in New York and around that area. I was born in Puerto Rico. As I came to the New York City in 1950, and I had no idea at that time how remarkably blessed I was. It takes many, many years to begin to realize that, this karma is not so bad. So this is part of the awakening that helps us to begin to work differently in our lives. Let's take the big problem of resentment and worry. Resentment and worry are codependent. I'm going to explain that to you. If you are resenting the difficulties of your past, there is a sort of a narrative playing in your mind about that. Now, it's a matter of degree, no doubt about it. However, resentment takes time and energy. It takes mind. The very same elements that require actualization. So, if we can actually become preoccupied with resentment, preoccupied, occupied, a job. In other words, resentment becomes our work. Can it ultimately help? Yes, as long as it is allowed to have a place. It has to have limits. In other words, we keep our resentment. However, the time, the energy, perhaps even the money and mind involved in resentment needs to not spill over too much. It has to be contained. And this is the problem. So we have to contain our resentment. Many of us are deeply resentful at the injustices, the deprivations, the suffering that we had in our earlier life. This is a problem, potentially. We must manage our emotional wounds and keep them, but provide them a place. Why? Preoccupation is not equivalent to occupation. And many of us are engaged in being right, for example.